On the morning of January 4th, 2026, Tehran's Grand Bazaar, a maze spanning 10 kilometers and 10,000 shops, fell completely silent. For over a century, Iran's merchant class helped topple kings, bankroll coups, and even ignite revolutions. But now, the power that propelled the Islamic Republic may be the force that ends it. The official story claims history cannot repeat, but what happens when the pillar itself decides to withdraw? To understand this crisis, we need to trace the bazaar's hidden influence from the first constitution to today's looming collapse. Iran's political history is shaped by a constant struggle among three forces: the palace, the mosque, and the bazaar. The palace represents the state, the monarchy, the military, and the bureaucracy. It wields formal authority and the power of force. The mosque stands for the clergy and religious institutions. It holds sway over belief, tradition, and social legitimacy. The bazaar is the domain of merchants, traders, and informal capital. It controls the flow of goods, credit, and economic life. For over a century, every major turning point in Iran has come when two of these pillars align against the third. When the bazaar and mosque united, they forced the Qajar Shah to accept a constitution in 1906. When the mosque and bazaar joined to oppose the Pahlavi palace, the monarchy fell in 1979. But when the palace and mosque worked together, as in the years after the revolution, the bazaar's influence was checked. This dynamic, two pillars balancing or toppling the third, has defined the fate of governments, revolutions, and economic crises in Iran. Every act of protest, every alliance, and every collapse can be traced to this shifting balance of power. In December 1905, two sugar merchants in Tehran faced public punishment for alleged price violations. The response was immediate. The entire bazaar shut its doors, and thousands of merchants and clerics sought sanctuary in Qom and at the Shah Abdulazim shrine. With the city's economy paralyzed for weeks, the Qajar Shah was forced to yield. By August 1906, he signed a constitution and allowed the formation of Iran's first parliament. For the first time in the Middle East, a merchant-led economic strike had forced a monarchy to accept limits on its power. Half a century later, the pattern repeated itself in a new form. When Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil in 1951, bazaar merchants threw their support behind him, seeing a chance to reclaim economic sovereignty from foreign hands. But the 1953 CIA-backed coup that restored the Shah left the merchant class feeling betrayed. Foreign companies and royal technocrats took the upper hand, and the bazaar's trust in the palace was broken. According to one Mossadegh-era historian, this sense of betrayal simmered for decades, fueling the unrest that would eventually sweep away the monarchy in 1979. The bazaar's economic power, once again, had proven decisive in the fate of the state. By 1975, the relationship between the Pahlavi state and the bazaar had reached a breaking point. The Shah's anti-profiteering campaign sent 8,000 inspectors into the heart of Tehran's commerce. Over 10,000 shopkeepers were arrested on charges of price gouging and hoarding. IRIB television broadcasts showed raids and public shaming. In one infamous moment, Ashraf Pahlavi, the Shah's sister, appeared on national television to denounce the Bazaaris as thieves, fueling resentment among families who had traded in those corridors for generations. A veteran merchant recalls hiding his cash ledger in the false bottom of a tea chest, fearing a midnight raid. With trust shattered, the bazaar's underground network sprang into action. Funds flowed quietly to Khomeini's exiles in Najaf, routed through mosque charities and trusted couriers. Oral histories describe merchants gathering after hours, pooling savings into cloth bags destined for the clergy. As strikes swept through the bazaar in 1978, the economy ground to a halt. The palace lost its last loyal pillar. When the monarchy fell, many merchants expected reward for their sacrifice, a hope that would soon collide with new realities. By the mid-1980s, the balance of economic power in Iran began to tilt away from the traditional merchants of the bazaar. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, once a military force, expanded into commerce through its engineering arm, Khatam al-Anbiya Construction Headquarters. This organization secured government contracts without competitive bidding, absorbing lucrative projects in oil, gas, and infrastructure. Investigative journalists traced the rise of Khatam al-Anbiya Construction Headquarters to a web of no-bid agreements and asset transfers, often outpacing private contractors who relied on open markets. At the same time, state-backed foundations known as Bonyads grew into economic giants, operating hotels, factories, and retail chains across the country. These bonyads were exempt from taxes and flush with subsidized foreign exchange. They could sell goods 20 to 30% less than independent shopkeepers. By 2025, bonyads employed nearly 400,000 people, dwarfing the workforce of the bazaar. Merchants found themselves edged out, unable to compete with entities shielded from market risks and buoyed by state privilege. The old alliances that once bound the bazaar to the palace and mosque were eroding, replaced by a system where access, not enterprise, determined success. Each morning in Tehran, the true value of Iran's currency is decided not by the central bank, but by a handful of brokers on Ferdowsi Street. Long before official rates reach government websites, these traders post the latest figures on encrypted Telegram channels, numbers that ripple out to every corner of the economy. Channels like at Nima Exchange and at Dollar Sarzaman publish buy and sell rates for the dollar, often every 15 minutes, based on live deals happening in the bazaar. The process is both simple and unyielding. Brokers gather overnight trades, verify volumes among trusted peers, and agree on a consensus rate. By 9 a.m., the bazaar rate appears on thousands of screens, setting the price not just for imported goods, but for bread, rent, and even wages. In late December 2025, as the Rial plunged to nearly 1.4 million against the dollar, these numbers turned into a weapon. Every merchant, every consumer, every business ignored the official rate. The government, powerless to intervene, watched as confidence drained from its currency, one telegram post at a time. Internet blackouts have become a new kind of blockade for Tehran's merchants. In early 2026, entire stretches of the Grand Bazaar lost access to global suppliers overnight. Payment systems failed, emails bounced back, and encrypted chats with partners in Istanbul or Guangzhou went silent. For a young carpet dealer who built his business on Instagram and WhatsApp, the shutdown severed every lifeline. He turned to VPNs and cryptocurrency, moving funds through digital wallets when banks refused to process foreign payments. But these workarounds only went so far. As the digital walls closed in, the merchants who once defined Iran's commercial heart began to look elsewhere. Brokers in Dubai report a 60% surge in Persian clients since 2020, with merchant families liquidating Tehran real estate and transferring wealth to gold or crypto. In 2025 alone, over 100,000 Iranians secured residency in Turkey, many from old Qajar dynasties. Yet even as capital flees, the guilds still distribute food parcels and offer interest-free loans to neighbors left behind, a fragile safety net in a city where the state's promises no longer reach. On January 4, 2026, the Grand Bazaar's iron gates stayed locked. 10 kilometers of corridors, 10,000 shops, and every stall from the gold market to the spice lanes stood in silence. Within 48 hours, the strike spread beyond Tehran to Isfahan, Shiraz, Mashhad, and Tabriz. Association statements circulated on Telegram, each stamped with the hour, each one calling for unity. A veteran merchant, his family trading here since the Qajar era, described the moment as a wall of silence, with no cash changing hands, no goods moving, just the echo of footsteps in empty halls. For over 3 weeks, the shutdown persisted in some cities, defying pressure and outlasting threats. Never before had merchants in so many cities closed ranks with such speed and discipline. The bazaar, long the pulse of Iran's economy, had stopped beating, and the entire country felt the shock. Armed Basij patrols swept through the bazaar's shadowed corridors, rifles slung and radios crackling. Shopkeepers summoned one by one faced demands to lift their shutters or risk arrest. Surveillance cameras blinked from fresh mounts over archways, their lenses following every movement. A field journalist whose voice was muffled to protect his identity confirmed the location of these patrols by matching tilework and shop signs in dozens of videos. One merchant, hands trembling, recounted being forced at gunpoint to open his family's jewelry stall. Others described plainclothes agents checking identity cards and jotting down names. In the past, the bazaar guarded its autonomy fiercely, but now the sense of safety had vanished. For the first time in living memory, the state's presence was total. It was watchful, armed, and unyielding. Today, The Bazaar's silence sends shockwaves through Iran's power structure. When economic trust collapses, political consent soon follows. No regime, no matter how forceful, can buy legitimacy once its historic pillar walks away. In this turning point, the future of Iran may be written not by rulers, but by merchants.